What's going on, guys? My name's Andre. Welcome to the First Instinct Fantasy Show. It'll be the first show of 2020. We're here to talk about NFL Week 5 football, and I got one of my good friends with me, one of my best friends. His name is Lemmie Bradley. Want you to talk to you. We're going to just give you, some good plays. Hopefully, you can win some money this week and end up being in a better situation I'm fortunate enough to be in. First, I'm going to pass it over to Lemmie to introduce himself and talk about yourself a little bit.
What's up, everybody? My name is Lemmie Bradley. Me and Dre, we're both from Newburgh, New York. We're just young, upcoming entrepreneurs just trying to do our thing. But other than that, when it comes to daily fantasy sports, we're just trying to do the best that we can to extract as much money as we can for ourselves. And for the daily fantasy, we have a good amount of experience, and Dre's had a lot more success than all of us as far as the friends are concerned across the different sports, from baseball to football to basketball. And, like how you just said, we want to just focus on week 5 and do what we can to help you guys just understand the perspective from a contrarian look when it comes to different plays that we have from a football perspective.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. I appreciate the love a little bit. So about
Gotta
myself,
mention
I'm Andre. Go by Drizzy26 on Fanduel and on Draftkings. I've been playing for about 5 years. I won a Million Maker this past year for when MLB came back, and then proceeded to win the 225 grand for when the basketball started back up too. So been on a little bit of a run lately. But overall, been playing for, like I said, about 5 years. Have a couple big wins over the past years too, and also been to a live final. So I know what it takes to win, and I know the experience what you need to do to hopefully make the good plays. So hopefully we can give you some good options and good plays, and you can take some advice and hopefully in turn win some money too. And if there's anything that you have any questions about, feel free to hit me up on Twitter. Twitter handle is going to be in the bio. So that way I can answer any questions you might have for this upcoming week or anything like that in the future. All right, so let's get into it first. The first game we have that we're going to get into is Arizona versus the New York Jets. Do you have anybody in that game that you like? It's a 47-point total. Talk to me about
it's
what you're
funny.
doing.
It's funny because when I even saw 47, I guess I was a little taken back. I actually thought it was going to be lower. I'll be honest. Obviously, we're going to look towards the Cardinal side here. I mean, there's no just fading something like that, right? I mean, obviously, we don't see this game as possibly being a shootout in the game script. That might just be my opinion. But a few players that just jump out to me. And, it's funny because I know we've had some, let's just say it hasn't been so successful for someone like this, but I will say this might be the week that we could say, you know what, let's have some of Kenyon Drake. I just wanted to mention that because obviously he's been letting a lot of us down this past weeks. And, we can always talk about Kyler and how he can, obviously get the ball down the field using his legs. He's very dynamic. We know he can possibly put up 20 fantasy points any given Sunday, right? I'm probably going to repeat that a lot. DeAndre Hopkins, we know he's going to connect with him. And, being that I think I would say Christian Kirk is back, it's not like it's going to be just easy to just call out like maybe which other wide receiver besides DeAndre Hopkins should do well. But to be honest, would you want to still keep him in your pool if you're playing a GPP format and you're maxing out 150 lines? Definitely. But I will say, at least from this game, one person that I am going to try to give a little bit more exposure to than what I see from so far on the percentage ownership that I'm projecting. I guess it's around like about 13 or 12%. I'm going to give some looks to Kenyon Drake this week because if I'm right, you'll be really different from the field. So not too much faith in it, but it's a matchup where you kind of have to just say, you know what, you got to have that short term memory to just say let's give it a try.
I mean, I get you when it comes to the King and Drake play. I just don't know how I feel about playing him most times. Like he's he hasn't been producing. I mean, he's on the field and everything you said is correct. Like he's on the field for like 70% of the plays and the
Hmm.
snaps, but with the way they move the ball, and it's a perfect matchup. He ideally should have a good game. I'm gonna definitely be probably at the field with him. I can't see myself going over though because just the way it starts off. It's the way well not starts off, but it's the way that the offense moves. I feel like it goes through Kyler and like you said to D Hop. D Hop has one of the best matchups on the slate. Like he might be in honestly majority of my lineups. Like this week is ugly to me for wide receivers. Not really that many options that I really like a lot of.
Yeah,
But
you're right.
yeah, Hopkins is just someone that I can see rostering almost any time and seeing what happens. Um, and it's a stack. It's a one-way stack, and it's a perfect stack. I think for like a deep tournament, having maybe like you said, if you put Murray, Drake, and you put D Hop together in like a FanDuel tournament for like the Millie Maker or something, I think that'll be a little bit different too. I don't think a lot of people are going to like to pair the running back with the quarterback and the wide receiver, so I think that can help out too. How you feeling about the Jets though on that side of the ball?
On the Jets side, at least just one thing that I'm going to mention. Obviously, for what we see this game script to be, it seems obviously that the Jets should be playing from behind, right? So,
Yeah,
in my opinion, I'm definitely going to have some shares of Chris Hogan. I know a lot of people have been dwelling on Chris Herndon over the past weeks, and he hasn't really lived up to expectations. I'm probably not going to have Chris Herndon, and I didn't have as much as him before as others did, but I mentioned Chris Hogan only because of the mere fact that he's 3,000 flat, and just from the
mm,
off chance that that the Jets are going to be throwing consistently anyway because they're going to be from behind. Maybe he gets 10 to 12 fantasy points. I'm not expecting some crazy day out of him, but just to mention from that perspective, someone from Chris Hogan or obviously a Jamison Crowder. I didn't want to just mention the obvious here, but I honestly see that being that Flacco is starting now, um, you know, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for him where he's going to have to be throwing in order for them to stay in this game. So whether they like it or not, I think Hogan and Crowder are going to get a lot of the looks here. So
yeah.
focus more on Crowder. Hogan is just a 3K, possibility. Not saying that I'm going to have a lot of them because he's not even that much owned.
Okay, and that's a good. I mean, I see. I can't get on Chris Hogan at all. He's just a play that I don't know. I don't know. Like the matchup with Drake Kirkpatrick. For some reason, Arizona's actually been playing somewhat good defense this year, and
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of weird to say that, but they have been. But the only person, but Flacco, I still think he has a little bit left in the tank. I kind
Mm-hmm.
of like Le'Veon Bell at 5,100 coming off the IR, but I just don't know what Adam Gates and what he likes to do with them. So that's something that I have to take into consideration too. But I really, really like James and Crowder, like you said, as a play, as a deep, deep, deep tournament throw. I like that. Hopefully, Joe Flacco can like target him about like hopefully 12 to 15 times. He's on the. I think he's healthy, and I think that he can have a big game and just give you enough points to win a GPP. Because like I said, wide receiver to me is not the best position in my opinion this week. So
It's not.
I can truly truly see James and Crowder being someone that can potentially be in a winning lineup if he gets you like 15 to 20 fantasy points at 5,800 unless you
And
good
he can, and
someone.
he can, right? Like because Jamison Crowder, what he leads the team in that target share. So
Yeah,
it's definitely something that you have to consider. Being that a team is playing from behind, whether that the Jets could score 14 points and the Cardinals can score 30, And what if one of those or two of those touchdowns are his, right? So it's still something that you have to at least account for because he's going to be getting the most of those targets, right? And like you said with
Yeah,
Le'Veon Bell, even though Frank Gore is behind him, Le'Veon Bell is definitely a better pass catching back. So what if there's some checkdowns there? So definitely, I agree with that too with Le'Veon Bell.
yeah, and also just simple fact that around that price point, like around 5,800 on, like I know we're supposed to go on by game, but like if you can look around 5,800 on DraftKings right now, like there's going to be players like Robbie Anderson around him, who
Mm-hmm.
granted he's been playing well all season. $100 more. You're going to have Deontay Johnson going against Philadelphia. It's going to be less, and it's going to be a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And Crowder's like in between them right there. And Russell Gage, which is in another game we're gonna get to next, that they're gonna be popular. And I mean, you're paying a little bit more, I get it, but the ownership is where I'm getting at as far as getting a weird play, and that's one of my weird plays. I think that can hopefully, cash you and get you some money. And I don't know if it'll maybe take that a tournament, but I think it can be a piece, hopefully.
There's
Um,
definitely a candidate. There's
it
definitely a
is.
candidate for it.
It
There's
just
not
has to
even.
see. We just have to see what happens.
Mhm.
Anything left you have on this game? Do you like any of the defenses or no?
Well, yeah, you gotta throw Cardinals in the pool. I mean, even though it's $4,100, I mean, if you're making a single entry or something like that, then I understand not going there because of the price of the defense. You probably want to go a little bit lower. But if you're playing 150 lineups or you're playing a bunch, a real big bulk of lineups here, you definitely want to have the Cardinals in your pool. At the end of the day, the Jets can turn things over, and their offensive line is just not that great. So
Hmm.
yeah, you got to have the defense of the Cardinals in your pool.
Okay, and I can get behind that a little bit too because the sacks will be there, and the Jets' offenses just look terrible this year,
Yeah.
and they can't move the ball really. So I expect that to hopefully a one-sided game, but Arizona was a little bit disappointing last week too. So we'll just have to
Mm-hmm.
see what happens. So let's move on to the next game where we have Atlanta versus the Carolina Panthers, and it's a 53. It's a, what 53 total? No, 55 total right now.
55
That
now.
I Yeah, 55 that I have right now. Open up a little bit lower. Um, what are you looking at with as far as this game? Because I see this game as being probably one of the more popular games of the week. And it should be a good one. I just don't. I have a little like I don't know. I have some reserves on this game a little bit though. What
Mm-hmm.
are you thinking about it?
You know, so it's funny because that you just mentioned, like, obviously this is going to be one of the more popular games, right? And
Hmm.
I think that another popular game is definitely going to be like Dallas and New York, for Giants versus Cowboys.
Hmm.
But when I look at this game from a perspective, I can't, you know, you don't want to overthink things, right? And at the same time, and as someone who's trying to really mass enter when it comes to these different GPP contests, you have to just account for both sides here, man. I mean, it's not even like this. I can't just say like pinpoint just one player, but I have to say that I like both sides. Like I'll even start with like Mike Davis for example. Um, I think
Hmm.
if I'm not mispronouncing the man's name wrong, their backup Bonifan, who vultured a touchdown from him last week, he's out. He's on
Hmm.
IR now. So there's a chance that Mike Davis is going to see even more run than what he was seeing before, and he was already getting close to 8 targets or so each week, or maybe on average 6 or 7 targets. Um, so if I expect this game to be a shootout, which I do, then I'm definitely going to include Mike Davis, even though he's going to be high owned because of the mere fact that now his backup is going to be on IR. I mean, he's already included in the passing game. So whether it's a goal line touch or whether it's just out in the middle of the field, he's going to be actively involved. I have to say that even though it's definitely obviously the chalky, easy play to mention in this conversation for this game, I have to still emphasize him because of that mere fact that his backup is now out. But I have to say, I do like both sides of this game, and I'm really feeling Teddy Bridgewater. And like you were just mentioning before about how Robbie Anderson was just about $100 cheaper than Crowder. You know, believe it or not, even though we've been very focused on DJ Moore for over the past few weeks, and the field has been as well, Robbie Anderson has been leading in the target share. He's been getting the most percentage on the team for the target share.
Hmm.
So, and I think it's about 8% more than DJ Moore. So, that's a significant difference. But that doesn't mean to avoid DJ Moore at all, obviously, right? But we already know Atlanta just gives it up in all sorts of ways. I can honestly see uh, there's potential here for where the teams just go back and forth. But just to highlight those two as like, who I'm really favoring. Obviously, it's easy to just mention DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson, but I really had to highlight Mike Davis just because of his backup being out. And then on the Atlanta flip side, we throwing in Julio into some lineups, you definitely have to try. And his injuries been
Julio.
bothering him.
I thought Julio was out this week.
If
Is he
he's been
still?
ruled out, then definitely. Last time I saw, it was still like he was limited in practice. But if he's definitely been ruled out, then all goes to Ridley, as I was about to mention. So definitely going to have some stacks where I have Teddy Bridgewater and, like you said, with or without Mike Davis as the part like that running back with a stack that has like Robbie Anderson or DJ Moore running it back with Ridley. There's definitely going to be some stacks in there for me like that.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, looking at it now, Julio is a game time decision.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if he plays, then yeah, I want to be all over it. And honestly, I kind of like the fact that he is a game time decision because
It's
that
going to throw
means
people off.
he's not going to be owned. Everyone's going to flock to Ridley. Everyone's going to flock to Gage. So I would tend to like, especially if you're paying attention to the news all the way up to lock.
Mm-hmm.
Just pay attention to that and try to lock in Julio. I've been iffy on the Atlanta side if Julio doesn't play though. Even though I know Carolina just gives it up too a little bit, it's just hard. It's just so like it's not hard to it's not hard to concentrate on who you want, but it's hard for me to not want to play Todd Gurley in a good matchup. And I know he's like disappointing every single week, and you got to worry about his knees. But but
Yeah, I haven't been my season long though. He had. I mean, he hasn't been too horrible. I think he's picked up over the past couple of weeks, to be honest with you. I think he's. Let me see. It looks like he had a couple of rushing touchdowns last week, and then the week before.
yeah,
I mean, the only thing is that he's not heavily involved in the passing game. He does get his couple
but that's
targets,
what but
but
that's
it's
what
it's not enough. That's the
I
only
just
thing
don't
that sucks
understand
about it.
why I really don't understand why he's not though. He should be involved more in the passing game. Like
Yeah,
I don't get it. I don't get what they're doing over there in Atlanta, and that's what kind of pisses me off with them. They
it
they
is
have a
weird.
they have a lot of talent and not using it effectively in the way they should. Um, but I love the Carolina side, like you were talking about. Mike Davis, he's gonna be the highest owned player. He might be a lock, honestly. Like I can say it with
You just gotta admit it, like he's gonna be a lock.
yeah, you might have to. He's 6,400. He's still cheap. He's cheaper
Yeah,
than
that's what it is. That's why I had to mention it still, 6,400, like you said. It's not like he's 8,000 and you got to think like, all right, how can I get around this if he's going to be 30% at 8,000? But it's like
yeah,
he's 30, 20, 25% owned possibly on DK for $6,400. I can definitely say, okay, let me put him in or match the field and I could get different elsewhere within the lineup.
yeah. And granted, there are a couple of the running backs probably that might project to do a little bit better than him, but they still cost more. So to me, I'm not even gonna worry about that. I might consider locking in Mike Davis all day. And I like how you mentioned Robbie Anderson. I think the secret's out now, and he's gonna be highly owned this week just based on
Mm-hmm.
how everything was, and already on top of the matchup.
Yep.
He should be able to burn right through that defense. Like there should be no one to be able to stop him, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Like and then DJ Moore, I think DJ Moore it's a good week to probably get on him.
definitely.
I can see him probably having a better game. just
Yep.
because everyone's going to flock more towards Robbie Anderson. And I wouldn't be surprised if you get a touchdown here, a sneaking little touchdown from Ian Thomas too. That's a
Mhm.
very sneaky play in a very good matchup, in my opinion, from what everything I've seen with that. And Matt Ryan, like back to Atlanta side real quick. I also like Hayden Hurst.
Yes, I agree with you on that.
Especially
I was going to mention that too.
I like him a lot more though. If only like I like to me, I don't know how much like I like him a lot more if Julio is out though. I think that would help him out tremendously. But we just have to wait for the news and see what happens. Even though I know Carolina's not really giving up a lot of fantasy points to the tight end, I could see him being utilized a lot more. Because just in the last game when Julio was out, I know it's a small sample size, but he had 70% of the snaps,
Hmm.
so he can be utilized a lot more on the field, and then hopefully take advantage of it.
And
So
honestly, even with Julio, he was still, running a whole lot of routes. So it's like
yeah,
Hayden Hurst is still just a part of that offense. And, although, like you said, the Panthers are definitely good against tight ends, at the end of the day, the Falcons are still going to run their offense, right? So
exactly.
there's still going to be opportunity for him. So yes, I definitely agree with you there. And I'm also going to even sneak in somebody else. Not to say I'm heavily high on this person, but I'm going to include him in my pool. I'm going to include Curtis Samuel. If this game really does get out of hand, as I think it might really be, or might really will, I can see him, especially at 2%, like similar to somebody else that you say is like that GPP
Low
um,
key, that's a good play.
person. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, because for him at $4,800 on DraftKings, I'm not sure what his price is on FanDuel, but I probably wouldn't play him on FanDuel. But on DraftKings, all it's going to take is a couple big plays. It could be one big catch for 30, 40 yards. Next thing you know, another catch or so, and he might have four catches, 80-something yards and a touchdown, and that's all you would need from someone at that price. So,
Hmm.
I could see that definitely happening here.
Okay, and I can get behind that play, not as much, but I can get behind it a little bit to see where
Yeah,
you're coming from with that.
yeah, it's not
And
guaranteed.
hopefully,
It's something to keep in the pool.
yeah, it is definitely for sure. Now let's move on to the next game. The next thing we have on the slate is this Kansas City versus the Oakland Raiders. Has like about a
Okay, let me pull
55
that up.
total currently. Um, I don't. This game has been something I've been thinking about more and more as the days going on.
Hmm.
Being recording this more so Friday night, Saturday morning. Um, I don't know what to do with this game because a part of me wants to say that it's a slower tempo game, and the Raiders are going to try to play keep away and run the ball on Kansas City as much as they possibly can. But I can see, obviously, with Kansas City, their offense is just a high-powered offense. They can just keep going and and scoring you in a blink of an eye. It's just it's something I've been thinking about pretty much like I said since I first looked at the slate. What do you feel about it? What are you looking at with the Raiders?
The way I feel about this game and the Raiders side, I mean, the Chiefs just seem matchup proof as it is. And for me, even though I would like to see the Raiders kind of slow things down, I just don't see how that happens because I know that the Raiders secondary isn't that great. And I can see the Chiefs going up 14-0 possibly within the first quarter. It's
Mm-hmm.
definitely possible. I could see a big bomb to Tyreek Hill within the first quarter and just ignites things and just, flares up from there. But
Mm-hmm.
not to say that the Chiefs are going to blow them out, but I don't see, like, for example, from the Raiders side, I'm very skeptical about having too much of Josh Jacobs. The way I'm favoring things, I think that being that their wide receivers are banged up, obviously they've been relying on Waller. We see Ruggs is coming back. There's big playability there because he's probably going to be next to Tyreek Hill, fastest player on the field. There's a possibility that he could get a bomb, but is it that much likely? It's going to be easy for the Chiefs to focus on the weapons that they do have, and especially I think because in my opinion, I feel that the Raiders are going to be playing from behind. So
Hmm.
in a sense, I'm gonna probably stick to having some shares of Waller here, definitely, because he's obviously like he's their favorite target, right? He leads in the target share here, so I'm gonna definitely have some shares of Waller. I may have a small percentage share of Ruggs just in case there is a bomb play that happens and he gets his whole like Deshaun Jackson, right? He just gets his whole fantasy day in one or two plays. That could
Yeah.
definitely very well happen because it's any given Sunday, right? But that's really kind of how I see the game script going here. Raiders kind of playing from behind. I'm really lower on Josh Jacobs, and you let me know if you feel different. But I'm a little bit more higher on Ruggs coming back. I think he'll be overlooked, even though that obviously he's just coming back off an injury. But more on the Waller side, so I'm definitely going to have some shares of Waller.
Yeah, and I'm still undecided, but I get what you're saying. I love the Josh Jacobs place. I know that John Gruden wants to run him to the ground all the time. I know that for a fact. It's just that
Mm-hmm.
like going back even to last year when they were playing, Josh Jacobs had like 17 carries, well, he had 10 fantasy points. He didn't really do that much work, but I want to look at the scores of each game, which I'm going to dig into to find out about when they played last year. Since this is a divisional game, and I don't know, like I said, this is the first thing pod. This is like the first instinct show. So like I typically go with my first instinct and my gut feeling. So
Yep.
and most of the time they end up being right. Um, not trying to be like brag about it, but they do. But I just feel this. I just feel like this game is not going to be as high scoring. I know the NFL has been more high scoring lately, but this game I think goes under, and the Raiders aren't that bad. They're getting a little bit of help back, like you were saying with Ruggs, but it's and Trent Brown, who I think will be a good help because he's a nice offensive lineman, so they can push
Mm-hmm.
the line. So I can see them like trying to keep Mahomes on the sideline as much as he possibly can, and then Mahomes obviously, like you said, hitting them bombs quickly, but then it's like you said, it's keep away. If you're holding the
Yeah.
ball for a long period of time, then it can work. But that's the way I think about with the game. Even though I love Tyreek, I love Mahomes, I love Kelsey. I just might not be as high on him in tournaments
Yeah.
because just the way I see the game going, I might be wrong about that, but that's just my opinion. I'm more higher like I'm more might be more inclined to be higher on staying away from this game just for the simple fact of the way that I feel the game script is going to go.
I somewhat agree with you as well. And what total did you see for that too?
The total I see for that game it was 55.
Wow. So that's really much higher than I would have expected.
Would
So
you would you have?
I mean, let me just see. Yeah, it's 55. So to be honest with you, that's actually kind of scary. I mean, when you even look at it, if William Hill, MGM, Westgate are looking at 55, DraftKings is looking at 66. That's kind of crazy. But
Mhm.
um, if that's going to be the total, then honestly, I'm going to have to rethink what I'm doing here because in a sense, like you said, you want you you
It's
you're thinking you're thinking that it's going to be a little bit like towards the opposite. Like it should be in the 40s, right? Like it should be like what the Raiders want to try to keep the ball away from Mahomes' hands, run the ball more, let the clock run more, have more. Like they probably won't have
yeah.
as much time as possession as Kansas City, but they're going to at least try to. Right, that's going to be like the strategy of it. Less ball and less time the ball is in his hands, the
Mhm.
better. But if they're feeling like this game is going to go to 55, I mean, those points are coming from a easy
We're
targetable amount of players here. It's fairly simple.
and we're
I don't know
forgetting about
if
and we're always skipped when we skipped over Edwards Hilaire. Like he's like one of the higher owned running backs too that everyone's on because he does everything.
Yeah.
He rushes the ball. He catches the ball at the backfield too. So I see his ownership reaching like 24%. So it's like,
Hmm.
do I really think that he's going to have that game? And like I said, as a whole, I'm just more inclined to not even play this game and be lower on it, just because I can't see that. I just don't see it. It's a divisional game, and just from me playing football, having experience, divisional games, you tend to know your opponents more better. You tend to
Hmm.
play them a lot tougher. Like,
Hmm.
no matter how many years I know from watching how the Giants and Cowboys played, and sometimes Giants were way better than the Cowboys, or Cowboys were, or vice versa. Those were always competitive and tough games because they were divisional games. So I can see that happening here and being low scoring, going under 55. I think like that might be a sports book bet that someone might want to make.
I was just
He
about to
goes
mention
under.
that. I was gonna say, you know what? If this 55 holds up, wake me up because I might have to throw something in for the under here. Because and
Yep.
you know, and I was just speaking more from the Raiders side here. From the Chiefs' perspective, yeah, Hilaire is definitely appealing, and you know it goes without saying. I know that in these past few weeks, you know, he's had like a little bit of a dip down from like what happened in like week one, but it's still that kind of like that get right spot for him where like you know if they do go up as I expect the Chiefs to do, like to
Hmm.
just stay you know afloat and above them and ahead of the scoring, I could definitely see them pounding the ball with him and not having to be as aggressive. So I was already thinking that, but as you said, being that he's probably going to be one of the highest owned players in the slate, like next to from a running back perspective, next to like a Zeke or a Mike Davis, I'm probably going to match the field or probably be a little bit under just to be different in other terms. But I do definitely see that this is still a good spot for him, even though I can't just say that you know I'm going to just fade the man. But from a Chiefs
I would
perspective,
understand that.
you know it's definitely you know like you said, it's a divisional matchup, so they should be played tougher. And 55 does seem a little eccentric as a total. If that game goes in that direction, then I'll be honest, I probably will not be on or have my lineups reflect something of that nature. I'll
Yeah,
just be wrong.
like if that game, if like to me, if Pat Mahomes is in the winning lineup, then he is. I can't see it happening though. I don't see him having a monster game. He's actually been playing, I think, like one of the more slower, I think one of the more slower places this year, or
Hmm.
has as slow as eight data if I'm correct, behind Drew Brees. If I'm correct, I
Hmm.
might be wrong on that one, but it's just something I can't see happening, and getting behind that game. I might have to like have a little bit of good exposure since I'm going to probably be paying a good amount of lineups, but not
Yep.
heavy, not
And
be
keep this
heavy.
in mind too. And this is something I was already thinking of, but then I obviously just saw the statistic. Like I think from a DraftKings perspective, the Chiefs are defense is I think projected about to be like 15% or so, maybe even a little more.
Mm.
So there's others that feel that the Chiefs are going to, you know, definitely kind of hold things down, especially being at home. So
Yep.
I mean, I know it's not like the the crowd advantage here, right? But still, they're at home and they're going to have the opportunity to kind of just hold the fort down. So I can, you know, I could see the game just not really getting to that 55 mark at all.
Yeah. I agree with you. So let's move on to the next game.
Let's go.
The Washington football team versus the Rams. Los
Yeah, let me
Angeles
pull that up.
Rams. Who I can start off on this side because there's not much that I really like about this game besides the Rams.
Yeah.
Um, and I like more so just the passing attack of Jared Goff with Cooper Cup and Robert Woods. Those two, like
Mm-hmm.
they just are good plays to me in this matchup. They're not
Mm-hmm.
elite plays, but they're good plays. Um, I think I would, and that's nothing I would even run it back with maybe besides McLaurin, but I still don't. I just don't like the matchup mainly. Like the Rams are still still have a pretty decent defense, and the Washington football team has a good front line, front seven, front four. So I I'm not really high on this game a lot. I know the total is what total for that game. I believe is 55. Also, if I'm correct.
55? That's
No,
55
no,
too?
no, 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 no,
I was
no.
gonna
It's
say, what do
40.
they do?
It's 45, and I can see that.
46 I got over here. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think that, and I can see that happening, and I can just see
Hmm.
more so the Rams just having on onslaught, and then just getting up so big, they probably just start running the ball with their with Henderson or with Malcolm Brown, one of those two running backs, and go from there. And that's the tricky thing. Like we don't know who, like the running. When you think you might know who the lead running back is, you don't know.
Hmm.
So I wouldn't even play the running backs on this matchup though to begin with. Um,
Yeah.
that's a little bit I have for this game though. It's just like I said, Jared Goff, Cooper Cup, and Robert Woods are the plays I'm looking at. I'll have maybe McLaurin and just in the pool for tournaments, but that's really about it. I can't see myself going anywhere else.
Yeah.
What about you?
A few things I'll mention. So, and I'll kind of start off with what you just mentioned from the running back perspective on the Rams side. It's going to be, I mean, I'm still debating, trying to see if maybe I could finagle in a few shares of possibly a Henderson or a Malcolm Brown, but it's such a toss up and a coin flip at this point. I might just leave that whole two-headed or possible three-headed monster with whoever the backup is. I might even just leave that alone completely. Because at the end of the day, it's like, will that win me a GPP? You know what I'm trying to say? So it's just like, will I get 25, 20 plus points out of one of their running backs? I'm not feeling that. So, I'm probably going to leave the Rams running backs alone completely. A few things else that I will mention from a defense perspective, I'm really feeling the Rams. I think that
I
there's
agree with
definitely
you,
opportunity here
100%.
for a lot of sacks. I know Kyle Allen is going to be starting now instead of Haskins. And I honestly think Kyle Allen's probably going to be a little bit more accurate and a little bit better than a Dwayne Haskins. But at the end of the day, still, we've watched the Washington football team allow some sacks, and it's definitely going to be a tougher matchup for them from what they've previously faced. So I could definitely see a strip sack, possibly. I could definitely see an interception here or two. They're going to be having to, like how you mentioned, they're going to be up. The Rams are definitely going to have the lead in this game, so Kyle Allen's going to have to throw it. So whenever you know that the offense that you're picking the defense for against is going to have to drop back multiple times, it's just more opportunity for strip sacks and for interceptions and pick sixes. And you have a Jalen Ramsey, you have an Aaron Donald on the team, so you have to, only think positive there. And they benched Dwayne Haskins for a reason. Now, a couple other things that I will mention, just as like from a GPP perspective, at the tight end position, I know a lot of people are probably going to come off of Logan Thomas as things just didn't kind of pan out the way it was supposed to the past couple of weeks as far as like people picking him because he's been just such a great price. But I'm gonna have some shares of him this week still because at the end of the day, knowing that the Washington football team is gonna be coming from behind, I still feel like Kyle Allen is gonna be able to connect with him a little bit more than what Dwayne Haskins was, especially with McLaurin too. Now, I'm not saying that this game is going to be a shootout, but what I am saying is that I do expect Kyle Allen to kind of check down a little bit more, use some safer throws to kind of, I think he wants to keep his job now. He has this opportunity. I don't think he's just going to be just going down the field with it. I think there's going to be some times where he's just going to have to say, you know what, Logan's here, boom. And Logan's a big target. So, and he's out there for pretty much 80+% of the snaps, right? And he's going to be out there running the routes. So I'm still going to go there at $3,500 on DraftKings. Not saying I'm going to have a, 4-3x of the field, but I'm definitely going to have him. And also, from an any given Sunday perspective, I'm just gonna mention Antonio Gibson, and the reason why is because he's 5K
What?
flat. I have to, and the only reason why is because Gibson has shown that he can catch the ball as well. So either way, I don't, like I said, will he win me a GPP? I don't think so. But at the same time,
No.
from like I said, I'm saying from an any given Sunday perspective, I'm gonna include some shares of him, even at that low ownership, because I feel that at any rate, they're gonna have to do the best that they can to move the ball. And I feel Kyle Allen is gonna want to make some safer throws to show that he can have like that poise in the pocket and that he can, move the chains. And I think in order for him to do that, he's gonna have to check down. So that's why I just feel like Antonio Gibson might, at that 5K range, he might do his job from a fantasy point perspective on DK. FanDuel, I wouldn't do it, but I think most of my assumptions is coming from my analysis coming from a DK perspective. So will I have a lot of him? No, he's going to be projected like I think 1 or 2% owned. I'm not going to have probably more than 5% of him in my lineups, but I'm going to have some shares of him.
How are you? I would sprinkle him in maybe one or two lineups just for my advice. I don't know. The kid is a good. I think it's a good prospect, a good talent, and I
Mm-hmm.
understand that the Rams do give it up a little bit in a running to running backs, but I just
Yep.
can't get behind it. And then he hasn't like over the past 2 weeks he's played less snaps than J.D. McKissick. Um, so it's just kind of iffy. It's like I don't know. Are we just trying to still make him happen and have him be a thing, or what? And I couldn't agree with you with the Logan Thomas call. He's a good play. I like all the check
Mm-hmm.
down routes he's going to get because I think they're going to really try to stop Terry McLaurin, and so Logan Thomas is a good play for this week in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
Because people are gonna be
and
off. You always want that when someone's trending down, and you still know the volume and the opportunity is there.
exactly. So hopefully you get all you have to do is just have about 3 or 4 catches, a touchdown, and about 50, 75 yards, and pays off his price. So I can get behind that play
Yep,
for
and let me
sure.
mention one more thing about like Antonio Gibson too. So if you remember when Kyle Allen took over when he was on the Panthers, he
Yeah,
was doing a lot of checking down to McCaffrey, right? And you've
that's all they
watched
had.
yeah, exactly, and you've watched the. I mean, to be honest with you, what does the Washington football team have? Like, even from their perspective, right? Like we've seen Antonio Gibson. I think he had about like 13 or 14, not targets, but carries last week, and I
Mhm.
think the other few went to like you said, McKissick or someone else. So he's definitely getting that biggest share, and he caught. I think he definitely had about over 70 yards receiving last week. So when he gets into space, he's dangerous. We've seen it with our own eyes. So even just from an eye test, like you see when Antonio Gibson gets some open space, he's
Mhm.
definitely there he's definitely going to be able to do some things. So that's why I feel like security blanket like Colin, like he wants to keep this job. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm above Dwayne Haskins now. Let me hold this down. So that's why I feel like I can see Antonio Gibson doing his job at 5K. If he was more than that, I'll have to be like, yeah, it's over. So that's the only reason why I mentioned it. The 5K price.
And that's understandable. I can get behind it with the 5K prices. And like I said, playing a share, but that's it, a
Mm-hmm.
share, and move on with myself and not waste any more of my money with that play in
That's
a
it.
way.
A share.
Now let's move on to a game that I think is a little bit. I feel like it's a little confused, and not confused. Well, it's a little bit of the unknown, but I
Mm,
think it's also exciting too, and that's the Houston Texans versus the Jacksonville Jaguars.
mm.
Um, that game to me is a little exciting because they finally got rid of their coach in Houston.
Fired him.
It it took them honestly a year and a half too late. Uh, a D Hopkins trade too late. Like as soon as you let go of D Hopkins, first of all, for David Johnson, like you don't do that trade. You
Yeah.
don't. do that trade. You running backs. You get running backs in the draft all the time. Just draft somebody. Have a young running back that can play and learn, and they'll be fine. That's what they should have did and kept D Hopkins, and they would have been fine, in my
Yep.
opinion. They have a good team, but I'm excited to see what happens now that Watson doesn't have to deal with that coach anymore. Um, and I think he's in a good spot here. I think he's just a phenomenal play. He's like projected to be like about 9% owned as of Friday night, Saturday morning. I just
Wait,
can't see
who?
myself
Nine
not
percent?
playing
Who?
about 9% Deshaun Watson.
Oh, this one. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
So he's on the lower end of the quarterbacks, and he has the upside to win you a GPP. I
Mhm.
love I just love what he can do this week, and like I said, I'm just interested in seeing what that offense looks like, and I like Will Fuller this week too as a to go with it because Jacksonville, most of the games tend to be a shootout. They do a pretty good job stopping the wide receivers, and this might end up being now the week. And talk about David Johnson not playing really that well. He might have a big week because it's
Mhm.
Jacksonville, but they give it up on the ground a lot. Um, I would definitely will have some shares of David Johnson, but I also like Duke Johnson too because I think this new coach, who I forgot, I got to check who's new coach again. If Duke Johnson though is I think a little bit more healthier, and can show like I think this. Let's see what happened. I think this past week he got in the game. Not that he was on the he had 12% target share, 5 attempts. He had 33% of the snaps, so I think he's back, and I think he's going to get maybe a little bit more work because he can also get work in the passing game, and I think that he can help them out a lot. That's something like a deep sleeper like that. I don't think anyone would be on.
Deep like
But I
5 times.
really, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
nah,
to me
I
it
feel
is.
you on that.
But I like that side of the game. I love the Houston side of the game. I'm not really much on the Jacksonville Jaguars side of the game. Um,
Hmm.
but that's just because I can't see myself playing Gardner Minshew this year. It's kind of hard for me to want to play that man. I know he just it's a gunslinger, and that's what you want sometimes. Because he pretty much has
That's what he
he
naturally
looks
is, right?
yeah, but he's a little too he's a little bit too too much for me. But I know that they have a good matchup with DJ Shark with on the outside. But I might just have DJ Shark instead and not have no Minshew. What about you? What are you thinking about this?
So, you know, I agree with a lot of what you said. Let me just start there. um, However, I think I do like the Jacksonville side probably a little bit more than you do.
Really?
It's, and I'm not saying that it's that much of a big gap from what you just spoke to, but I just do feel like with the way that Houston's defense has been, um, it's they haven't really been stopping anything, week to
Yeah.
week, and I feel that even though Jacksonville obviously in itself is a little bit of a struggle, I can honestly see a game like this being one of those sneaky GPP, like, oh, you should have stacked this game from both sides, like maybe even a 3-2, because, you know, at the end of the day, me and you both, and you already mentioned it, like even Deshaun Watson. I mean, DK projected 6% own possibly. Like, are you serious? I'm doubling that in my GPP lineups, like no matter what. So, and Will Fuller, like he's definitely going to be the man there. And I might even, for some GPP lines, I might even go as far as trying to throw some Cobb and some Cooks in there. I know Cooks didn't have a good game last
Hmm.
week, but at $4,100, I am going to have a few shares because at the end of the day, it only takes one play. So I'm definitely going to have, from that Houston side, I'm definitely going to have some stacks with Deshaun and those wide receivers and even maybe even David, because even though you mentioned Duke, and I'm glad that you mentioned Duke because honestly that educates me a little bit as far as him being out there for 30% or more, 33% of the snaps. David Johnson is also getting targets himself. It's not to say he's getting a whole lot like someone like a Mike Davis, but he's getting about 3 to 4 targets each week. So the opportunity is definitely there for him, where he's able to get 15 to 20 touches, or 16 to 18, or close to 20 touches. So I'm still going to also have some David Johnson even wrapped around in some stacks where Houston possibly takes the lead here and lets David Johnson kind of get a little bit more work, as they've maybe Watson has already connected to a Cooks or to a Fuller, and now Minshew is trying to gunsling his way back into the game. And like I said, Houston's defense just doesn't seem to be. I mean, I think I've seen that there's going to be some ownership on Texans defense, but obviously as a value play, will I do it? Yeah, because defenses sometimes, it seems like the scoring totals kind of get really similar at some points, unless somebody has a crazy like punt return touchdown or something like that. But I do feel that Minshew can definitely fight against this defense, and it seems like both defenses are just going to allow whatever. So that's why I say that I like Jacksonville a little bit more than you do. So I will have some Minshew stacks involving some James Robinson, some Keelan Cole, some Chark, of course, it goes without mentioning. But I will have that too.
And how do you feel about James Robinson, since you brought him up? Like, I know he's projected to be 11% owned, and I
Mm-hmm.
know, I know, I know Houston tends to not be that good on the ground, um, and stopping anyone. I mean, I think it can work only in a game sack, but that's about it in my opinion. But I can get behind some of those plays, but I just can't. I don't know. Just nothing. Something in me just does never likes playing Gardner Minshew, and maybe it's just because I get him wrong every time I play him.
Minshew
But
Magic, just like Fitz
yeah.
Magic, Minshew Magic. It's the stash. But I think that, I think for James Robinson, honestly, I'm treading lightly with him still, even within my exposure, because at the end of the day, it's not like he's in the 5K range. This man is $6,700. So usually when I play somebody at that range, it's almost like I want to make sure I guarantee that you have a good amount of points. So to be honest with you, yes, he will be in some stacks, but I think that I'm probably going to have uh, a lesser, uh, you know, a little bit lesser than the feel for what it ends up being once I honestly see like that projected ownership towards like closer on that Sunday. I want to see
Hmm.
kind of where that floats to. But, obviously we know James Robinson is definitely he's involved in that passing game as well. But at the same time, is he going to get the touchdown? And, that's definitely going to count. So, if I feel like it's going to be more from the wide receiver perspective here, as far as how touchdown equity is going to be distributed, that's kind of how I'm leaning to right now. My mind could change, but for $6,700, I'm probably going to have a little bit less than what the field is.
And I don't blame you for that because I probably would too. I don't plan on I plan on having some, but not a lot. But I think in a game stack it could work, especially if you're doing like Watson, Fuller, and Cook,
Mm-hmm.
and running it back with Robinson. If you think that the game's going to be go that direction. I do really, really, really like the Brandon Cooks call. He's going to have a game at some point.
At
It's
some point.
at some point. I'm interested in. I really, really am excited though to see what Tim Kelly brings to his offense. I believe if I'm correct, I want to say they were letting him call the plays, or Bill O'Brien, before he got fired, was letting him call the plays up until last week.
Really.
I have to double check that out, but I believe so. Um, I just am excited about it. I think that he really can maybe let Deshaun Watson go a little bit more and just and just he'll be able to play a little bit better, in my opinion. I'm gonna have some exposure to this game. I don't know. I'm gonna have a lot. I want to have a lot more than the field, but I'm still want to tread lightly because I still want to see what the coach does too at the same time. So that's what I'm
Hmm.
gonna be waiting for and keeping an eye out before I just go all in and see what happens. So, but
I think
let's
I
move
think
on
one
to.
other, I think before we even move on to the next game, one other person I'm gonna just mention that I am gonna have some shares of. Not saying it's gonna be a lot, but he's gonna be included in my pool. I mentioned Chark, I mentioned Keelan Cole. I will have Laviska Chenault Jr. also
Mhm.
included within the pool. So I just wanted to mention that too because he's around that same price range as Keelan Cole, and he's seeing around the same amount of target share. So
Mhm.
I just wanted to mention that because it's like, why would I play Keelan Cole but not also include some Chenault? So with a $200 less difference, I could get to that.
I understand that play. I get behind that a little bit, but not a lot.
No,
I
not
still
a
want to
lot,
see
not
what
a
the
lot.
kid. I want to see what the. I still want to see what the kid does. Um, but let's move on to Pittsburgh versus the Eagles. A battle of Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, the state of
Oh yeah,
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
The state of
Battle of
Pennsylvania.
Pittsburgh.
Gotta love them. So
Yep.
that's a 44 point total that we have on this. What are you thinking about when it comes to this game? And let's start with the Pittsburgh side. What do you think?
The way that I'm thinking that this game is gonna go, I honestly feel like I hate to say it. I think the Eagles are gonna get their ass kicked. I really feel that, you know, the way that just the Eagles have been just struggling. I mean, you know, to be honest with you, as I've seen like Wentz over the past weeks, and it's funny because I'm actually a Wentz fan. Like I actually respect Wentz, but it's just so unfortunate how there's been just so many injuries. It's been tough for him to really get going. Right, he doesn't really have his whole complete roster in a sense offensively, and I honestly just think that I think Pittsburgh's really going to give some trouble here because
Mm.
Pittsburgh has already, from a defensive perspective, if you obviously you've looked within the past few games, but they've definitely been top of the league when it comes to sacks and interceptions. So especially sacks. So I honestly feel like being that Philadelphia's offensive line is already battered as much as it is, like I think about two or three, I think two of their offensive linemen are on IR. I think their left tackle is like a third string. Like it's just not boding well for them as it is, and they've struggled against like, obviously other teams that have had lesser defensive talent. So coming into this game with Pittsburgh at home, I have to say I'm really skeptical about picking anyone outside of Ertz just for some shares. But to be honest with you, I think one of the players that I have on this slate that I'm really going to be overweight of the field is going to be James Conner. I think that you know I don't see a shootout, so I'm not going to have too many Ben Roethlisberger stacks. Can he throw a few touchdowns, a couple touchdowns? Yes, definitely. But I'm going to be honest. I'm really having a lot of my first instinct is definitely just speaking to me when it comes to James Conner here. I think he could have a really good day here as the Steelers go up and they keep it on the ground, and he can definitely catch passes as well. And he's been getting a lot of that bell cow like work as he's been healthy. So obviously, the injury scare is there, right? Because he's just, similar to like Anthony Davis. We're just talking about basketball before we
Hmm.
recorded this, right? Like he's always hurt. But if healthy, I think James Conner could have a really big day here.
Okay, and I can see that. I can get behind the play just because I know his price is 69. on DK, which is a great number to begin with. But um, I just I can't see, I don't like this game a lot. I
Yeah.
think it's gonna be I think it's gonna be I really think it's gonna be ugly, messy. I can see 44 really being what it goes to, or if not, maybe a little bit under, or maybe even a little bit over, but nothing crazy. It's just gonna be a little bit of a back and forth game, not a high pace, high scoring game. I like the defense of the Pittsburgh Steelers since they've been playing well all year. Wentz has not been the same. I There's no one even on the Eagles side I would like besides maybe Sanders, and that's only because I know he gets a lot of the work. But even then, I still don't like it a lot. And the receivers, I don't know what receiver to go with because it's not really one major one that stands out to me from everything I've seen. They all play about the same amount of stats as far as Greg Ward, Hightower, and Flemmingham. It's just more so about the routes that they run and the production that they have, which could be a different guy every week. Only people I know you can count on in the offense is Zach Ertz, which he's been there,
That's
especially
why
when
I
he's
mentioned
healthy.
him. Yeah.
Yeah, and I get that. I can see myself playing him, but not that much because that defense is still, I think, going to have time to just focus on him, and
Hmm.
maybe try to have them beat him and have Carson Wentz try to beat them some other way, whether it's with Miles Sanders or with some of the other receivers that I brought up earlier. And then when you get to the Pittsburgh side, Connor, like I said, Connor's a great play. I can get behind it, especially at the price. And it allows you to get different in GPPs because he's going to be a little bit lower owned than everyone else. He's just a little bit costly though. That's the problem compared to other running backs. And then Deontay Johnson. Um, I see why people are playing him.
Hmm.
I just don't have a lot of exposure to him. But overall, for a game perspective, I don't think I'm gonna have a lot of this game just to even begin with. I don't. I
Hmm.
think this. I just can't see myself rostering really anyone from this game except for maybe like a one off and hope that they do
Hmm.
well.
Yeah. I'm not gonna have too many stacks here. Like I was mentioning, right? Like I'm not gonna even have too many Ben stacks. I'm gonna have a couple just in case something happens any given Sunday, right? But like you said, it's gonna be more one-off related here. Like, and even Miles Sanders, like I think you're educating me a little bit more on that because, like you said, he gets most of the work. Once if he knows what's good for him before he takes these sacks, he's gonna have to check down. That's why I kind of like Ertz a lot because I feel like over the middle of the field there could be some openings there and some quick throws that he can make that's within like that 5 to 7 yard range. But
Hmm.
you know that's the only thing that I could really account for to think of like where there'll be any kind of success where Wentz moves the ball down the field unless Pittsburgh just you know wakes up and just doesn't feel like they want to play that day. Like I don't see how else like anything else got being for the battle of Pennsylvania. I don't see how they play worse. So going back to like the Steelers side, I'm definitely gonna have um, a little over the weight of Juju. I think that like a lot of people are on Deontay, and that makes sense. And it's funny because a lot of people are gonna mention about like how Darius Slay is obviously still on the Eagles, right? And he's supposed to be this big lockdown corner, but he's not Darrelle Revis. Now, obviously, he's going to be more on the outside, which will probably guard someone like a Deontay Johnson, and he's going to be more high owned. So maybe he does give him a little bit of a struggle, but it's probably not going to be too much, nothing crazy. But Juju plays in a slot, so I'm definitely going to have, some shares of Juju because at 3%, 4%, single digit percent, against this kind of defense, why not? Like, so I'm going to have some shares of Juju here. So I wanted to mention that too.
Okay, and I can see that. I can see it more so on a FanDuel play though,
Hmm.
than DraftKings. I think his price is just a little bit too high.
And more of a one
Um,
off, like you say.
yeah, unless it's like unless you have the salary and you want to just be extremely different, then
Hmm.
yes. But I can't see myself. Personally, I would probably not play anyone from this game, but I probably, knowing me, will have a little bit of exposure to Juju, a little bit closer to Deontay, and a little closer to Miles Sanders, and Connor. That's really about it. I can't see myself getting no exposure to anyone else from the same. And maybe Ertz, but I don't think Ertz is gonna have the monster game. And if he does, um, you can come text me about it and give me shit about it. But
Yeah.
but, but we'll see what happens. Now let's get on to this next game. It's a 50-point total. Boston, I mean not Boston, Baltimore. Sorry, I'm thinking basketball a little bit for some reason.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
because we were just watching the finals.
Baltimore versus Cincinnati. What are you looking at when it comes to the Cincinnati side? I want to start there because I don't know what to do with Joe Mixon. I I'm not a fan of Joe Mixon. I'm so mad at myself because I limited him to 15% last week, and he went off and had a monster game.
Hmm.
And my projection and my lineups were just spitting him out like crazy. I, I just said no. I know how this ends, and it wasn't going to end good, and it would have ended really well. I would have won a lot more money last week.
Hmm.
Um, how do you feel about them as an offense and this game and yeah, in this game? How do you feel about it?
I mean, if you know, I'm probably going to repeat this a lot by saying the any given Sunday aspect, but if Joe Mixon beats me this week, I had him last week. Don't get me wrong. So, I mean, I made a little bit more than what I spent, so I didn't really have a great week last week. But still, if Joe Mixon beats me this week, I have to just tip my hat. I mean, the Ravens defense is really really good, especially
But there's
you know.
holes. There's holes in that front set. There's holes a little bit
Say it again.
in that line. There's holes a little bit in that lineup. I
There
mean that
is,
and
and there is, and, you know, for me, it's like if they're gonna go to mixing and pound the ball through Baltimore's defense all day, I would just really like to see that because then I would really, you know, that would basically mean this total will be under because you know when you have a Marcus Peters on the outside and you have Humphreys on the outside, I don't see how most of like Boyd and the other and T Higgins and AJ Green go off too much, you know, for Burrow.
mm,
So it's like for Cincinnati to move the ball, it's going to be a struggle in itself from a throwing perspective. So you know, just to think like, all right, they could just pound the ball to Mixon as if he's Derrick Henry. You know, I'm not seeing that. So it's hard for me to grasp that to say like, yeah, this is the possible avenue that they're going to be able to move the ball down the field consistently and keep up with Baltimore. You know, while Lamar is connecting with Marquise Brown, who I really like this week, and Andrews and moving the ball down the field consistently. So for me, it's just I have to say like the way that my first instinct is just like flowing for me. If Mixon beats me this week, then I'll tip my hat. I had him last week, so it's not like I could say I missed out on him and I'm fading him again. But I just don't see how Cincinnati really has too much success this week, and Baltimore's at home too.
okay, and I get that. And so in the Baltimore side, you're just more so a fan of Marquise Brown, or do you like everyone else on that offense too? Because to me, I kind of love Lamar Jackson this week. I
Hmm.
know he says will be 10% owned. I have a feeling that might come in a little bit lower because we haven't gotten to like the probably the most popular game on the slate yet. But I like you said, I love the connection with running like a Lamar Jackson, Marquise Brown with well if Mark Andrews plays because I don't know if he's going to play yet. Is he? I think he's still in the injury. Is he? He practice? Did he practice today?
Oh, did you hear something negative about him that I
I
need to
know.
know
I
about?
think if I'm correct because obviously in our season long league I have him. I
Yeah.
believe he showed up on an
Well, we could
injury
find out right
report.
now.
Yeah,
Okay, so he was
check.
limited again. So at least you have that limited there. It looks like there's still going to be there's going to be you know, some
Yeah.
optimism there as far as him playing. So it's not like he
So
just did
if
not
he
participate. When you
yeah,
limited, you at least
but
have a chance.
if he plays, I love this that stack. I love the Marquise Brown, Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews stack. I just love it. I might
Hmm.
that might be one of my favorite stacks to go with. I know it's going to be expensive, but it might be a little bit good to pay up and be a little bit different from
Now,
everyone else.
and being that you be paying up for that, um, you know, if you do, so do you feel that Cincinnati would be staying in this game? Because although I feel like definitely he can connect with them too, it's like how much will he need to connect with them? You know what I'm trying to say? Like I feel like definitely like Lamar, you know, there's going to be a time where obviously when they go up, they're gonna try to keep the ball on the ground, and whether it's with Ingram or Dobbins or a mix of him too, having some carries, like do you feel that he'll connect with Andrews and Marquise Brown that much to where it's like you're gonna have like that kind of like a stack where you're running it back with someone like a Boyd or something like that?
I,
Like what are you feeling
I
about this game that makes you feel like you really like that stack that much to give
I
that
just like it
output?
from this. I just like it from that side of the game. I'm not even looking at running it back with honestly anyone because I
Mm,
don't think I'm gonna have anybody on Cincinnati.
okay.
Truthfully, and if and if it is, it might be a little tiny bit of Joe Mixon because Joe Mixon is a hit or miss when it comes to playing them. So I know Baltimore can give up a little bit on the ground, but not a lot. They have to
Hmm.
me they have like a bend but don't break defense attitude. So I would
Hmm.
definitely honestly probably like try to just stay away from them as much as I possibly can. Besides going um with Mixon and just rolling with the defense of Baltimore too because it can be an onslaught. Joe Burrow has been playing well through his first 4 weeks in the NFL. And I think he will have but I think it ends here when it comes to playing against Baltimore. And if he has a monster game, I'll tip my hat off. But I highly doubt it. If I'll have a little bit of Joe Mixon, not probably a lot again. So we'll see what happens. And I just hope that he plays well. But I'm not gonna go overweight. Even though unless for some reason I get talked into him, but we'll see.
What's the percentage ownership you have on Mixon?
Uh, Mixon have about I think it's like 8%.
Hmm.
No, actually no. He's at 3%, so he's low
I was
owned.
gonna say that sounded even pretty high, even though it was a low percentage
Yeah,
already on its own, but that still sounded pretty high. So if you're right
he's at
about
three
that,
percent.
you're definitely gonna be way ahead of anybody.
So so people respect the matchup I think with Baltimore, and they realize that.
Yeah,
I I just know that he can have a game. I don't think he will, but he can.
I would love
I'm,
if they were involving him in the passing game, a lot more. Um,
we
he
all
had a he
love
had a
that.
good catch last week, right? And we've actually had this conversation last week, that same day before lineup. Remember when I was driving back from my softball game, we were talking about how like, hey, like he's talented enough to bust to break out in the outside, and
Hmm.
why not use somebody who's that dynamic and young and who has the legs to get in the open field and make things happen for you. So why not have him do that? And what happened? He had like a 35 or 40-yard catch. So it's like you gotta do that. You gotta implement that. You gotta use him for he's if you're just running him the ball and just only giving him carries like he's Derrick Henry, it's just like okay, like that's not him. So
Yeah, exactly. I get it. But I mean, we'll see what happens. I'll have a little bit, and then I'll just move on from there. Now
mhm.
let's move on to Miami versus San Francisco. It's about a 50-point total. Do you like anybody from that game? Because me personally, I don't have a single soul. Like I would never have. I don't. I literally don't have. I don't think I have anyone from my player pool in there besides Jared McKinnon, um, Debo Samuels. That like I just have and George Kittle and the defense. That's about it. I don't have anyone from this game, especially not on the Miami side.
Hmm.
I can't see myself playing anyone really for that game. What about you?
So to be honest with you, I'm sort of on board with you. Like I was kind of waiting for some more news, and the reason why I say that is because I've been seeing a lot of news around Mostert, and that would affect obviously McKinnon, right? So
Yeah.
I was kind of like when I was looking at this game, I was just thinking like, you know what? Before I could really just have heart and really just analyze certain things. Like I obviously understand who's healthy, but just to assume, if Mostert is, available to play, I'm throwing him in the pool because, if you're telling me he had a full practice in, or, he's able to play and he's not going to have any kind of like snap count cap of any kind or anything of that nature, then who's to say that he can't bust a 75-yard run against Miami? Like, it's Miami. So, I'm going to definitely just pay attention to that. But other than that, I think I also saw some news around Jimmy Garoppolo. And I think he had to pass a few more tests or something of that nature. But it seems like um, oh no! So he is going to start this Sunday versus the Dolphins. So that opens things up because now we're not looking at a Mullins. We have actually Jimmy behind center. So I'm definitely gonna have some George Kittle. I feel like that was probably the only person that I was really emphasizing from this game holistically. But I'm still going to evaluate this game a little bit more because obviously we know that the 49ers have some injuries on their side on the defensive end. So, why would I fade a Devontae Parker when, possibly the 49ers could be up and they're at home and Fitzpatrick is going to have to throw a lot to try to stay in the game or whatever. So it's like, yeah, am I gonna just sit here and think like there's going to be somebody here that's going to win me a GPP? Possibly not. And that's really how that first instinct mindset is for me. But I'm going to try to have some shares of Devontae Parker. I probably won't go to Preston Williams. Probably won't go to Gesicki, but I could. And I'm definitely going to have some George Kittle, and I'm going to just wait and see what I hear about Mostert because that running back situation is definitely going to be something I want to be a part of for this game. I definitely want to have one of those running backs, but I want to see what happens.
And I agree with that. Because we know that's what they want to do. They want to run the ball. I don't expect Jimmy G to even throw the ball a lot this week or anywhere in the foreseeable future. So I
Yep.
personally am not going to be. I'm not going to really be on it. Besides the players I've mentioned out to you before, and that's just a little dab, a little sprinkle here and there of them. But that's really about
Hmm.
it. And that's it from that game, in my opinion. I can't even see myself playing any Dolphins. Only person I would play is maybe Devontae Parker, and that is if that. But realistically, I can't get behind it really.
Yep.
So
I agree with that.
let's
There's
move.
there's nothing much more to to that.
mm,
And I think
So
Debo
let's.
Samuel might be coming back too. So it's like, but either way, like
Yeah,
you said, I don't
Debo is
expect Jimmy to
coming
be
back.
throwing too much, but it's like,
He definitely he's coming back this week. I just don't see it. Devontae Parker to me is the only player I could play for Miami and just hope that he has a good game.
hmm.
So now let's move on to the next game. Cleveland versus the Colts. 48 total is the game. What do you like from the Cleveland side? To me, well, in my opinion, I think this game's gonna be a slugfest. I mean, like as far as low scoring, with both defenses being pretty decently good. What do
Yeah,
you think about this game?
yeah. It's weird because it's like one of those, like it doesn't seem that crazy appealing, and it's like because
Especially
both.
with two. No, sorry, I was saying especially with like two teams that like you wouldn't expect them to even be good or play good defense. The
Yeah.
Colts and Cleveland, after the history we know or grew up on, and how they are have come so far now.
Hmm. I think that and I'll say I have shares of both of their defenses. I could even start there. So the fact that you just mentioned that, like honestly, one of my favorite value defenses on the slate was the Browns. I think that Phillip Rivers, he just doesn't seem like the Phillip Rivers that we once knew, and there's definitely opportunity here where he could throw a pick. And there's definitely opportunity for Myles Garrett or someone to come around and get a strip sack. So even though this game doesn't seem like a shootout, it's still going to be close enough where I feel like both teams are going to have to be aggressive throughout the entirety of the game. So
Mhm.
that's why I feel like even on both sides, like, yeah, I'm going to have some Colts share defenses. And yes, I'm going to have some Browns share defenses. Just from an offensive perspective, I will say, I'll just mention one thing. So it looks like Njoku's coming back. If he's active, then I'm going to be really skeptical to having like even my small amount of shares of Hooper, because they're going to be splitting. So I'm just monitoring that. So that's like the most I could say on that. Mo Ali Cox, I know he's had a little bit of recent success, but I'll just be honest. He's not really running a lot of routes. Like even though he's had like a couple of good days where people have been able to use him in the GPPs, it's like go ahead and use him if you want to. I can't rely on it because, and if I'm not misquoting this number, I think he's running like about 30 or 40% of the 30% of the possible routes that are run for the passing plays. So it's like it's not like he's out there like someone like a Hayden Hurst who's out there for 70 or 80 plus a percentage of the routes that are run for the passing plays. So he's mostly blocking, and that's where I'm like, maybe if he beats me, whatever. But I'm not gonna be having too much of him, even though he's had that recent success. Um, it seems like even though, and I'm suffering from this in my own fantasy long, my season long leagues. T.Y. Hilton. I mean, I guess Philip just isn't finding the man. I thought that he would, even after the injuries. But it just seems like he seems like Zach Pascal. And, even though there still hasn't been that much crazy success, I guess you could still have some shares of T.Y. Hilton and Zach Pascal just because, Philip has to throw to somebody, right? But,
Mhm.
am I heavily on it? Am I feeling it greatly? No. If anything, I'll probably just match the field with it. If I'm max entering, if I'm making a single entry, I will not even look their way. Um, but that's really much it. And even from Jonathan Taylor's perspective, it seems like he's been not heavily involved in the passing game as much as I thought he should be, similar to how we were having that conversation with Mixon. It's really surprising because I feel like, in the first couple of weeks, it's like, you target him about like 8 times in 2 games. And it's just like, well, what about these last 2 games when we played the Jets and the Bears? Like, why not give him some targets there? So I'm not too sure like what's happening offensively from the coordination perspective, but you know he should, being that he's at 3.8%. I probably will have a little bit more than that just to kind of be a little different, opposite
Mhm.
of what the field is if they really do land on that percentage. But um, I can honestly say I'm not really too faithful in the Indianapolis side offensively, but I just wanted to mention those names just because those are going to be the folks that are going to see most of the work. From a Cleveland side, we've heard about Chubb, so he's going to be on IR. So why not have some shares of Kareem Hunt? I think he's going to be definitely a fairly owned. I'm not too sure if I'll jump up to like having 25% of him in my lineups or something like that if it gets to that number. But Kareem Hunt is definitely going to be someone that I'm going to have some shares of, being that he's going to get most of the running back work, if not all of it. And you have to try to have some shares of Odell and Landry, even though um, you know the Colts defense has been pretty well. Been playing pretty well. So it's like I said, it's one of those games where it's just like, do I expect this game to be like 40 something to 35? No, I don't. But if the game's going to be close, these are the players that are possibly going to, at least put something on the board. So Odell and Landry, I'm still going to have somewhat in my pool at a small percentage ownership.
Okay. And
Not too many stacks here. I guess that's what I wanted to mention too. Not too many. I'm not going to have a lot of Baker and Phillip Rivers stacks, but those players are just more
uh,
like one-offs. Kind of have them included.
yeah, I think I'm not even on any one of these players as far as quarterback wise. in my player pool. I'm more like you said, the one-off plays. Using them sparingly, more so Kareem Hunt, probably more so than anyone's gonna be used a lot more. Um, from my perspective, excuse me, but I have to see how I feel about it. 'Cause I'm gonna dig a little bit deeper into it because I know the Colts have a good defense, but I might
I can
if
see how
I'm
you're
paying
feeling about it. You're yawning, so it's like I already know how you're feeling about
but
it.
you might be right. It might be like it's no for me with this game then. But I really think though, if I'm gonna construct my lineups the way I think I'm going to, with having a lot more Baltimore, which is what I'm leaning towards right now, then just to be a little bit different, then I definitely might not end up being on Hunt. But I got to see how I feel about it. I don't like it though from like this game a lot. I like the defenses, but not
Yes.
the game. I think it's gonna be some turnovers, so I can expect the defenses to play a big part and be fantasy relevant for that reason and reason alone. Um, so now let's get to the final game, the probably the most popular game on the slate from what I think is going on, and that's the Dallas Cowboys versus the New York Giants. And who
Hmm.
would have ever thought that Daniel Jones would be the second most popular quarterback on the slate?
It's
On
like
on DraftKings, mind you. Not
yeah.
FanDuel, on DraftKings.
Oh, it's not FanDuel. Okay, so
No,
FanDuel they're
FanDuel
not expecting it.
he's like seven. He's projected like seven, but we'll have to see when it ends. But that's just I don't
So
even know.
what percentage ownership do you have for Daniel Jones right now for
I have
DraftKings?
I have about 11 point like 11 12%.
11, 12%. Okay, okay. And that's around second. That's what you're saying. About second
Yes.
place. Wow. You
I
know,
mean point
I think it's because if we've noticed
Ima-
from last week, we kind of seen how you
Cowboys just
know
give it up.
yeah, Cowboys just give it up, right? And Baker Mayfield was even very uh, you know popular and talked about, and he started off pretty well, but
I have a lot of
still,
Baker.
yeah, and we did. But then obviously it stopped because they run the ball so much. But that's just Cleveland's game script or how their game plan is. So
Yes.
for for the Giants, they don't have Saquon. They just signed Devonta, and they're not going to give him the ball. They're not going to rush for 300 yards. So I see why like that narrative is there, and it almost seems too obvious, right? So it's just like how this works. Whenever it just seems like something's too obvious, it ain't gonna happen. So it's just
Yeah.
like even though the Dallas Cowboys are really just like you said, giving it up at all costs when it comes to from their defense. Who's to say that the Cowboys defense isn't the pick of the week? You have to still account for this and probably have some Daniel Jones stacks. But if you just want my opinion before you kind of dive into your players, and you just let me know before I go into mine, I think I'm gonna be, contrarian and kind of go under the field with Daniel Jones. But you just let me know how you feel, and maybe that's a crazy take. But I'll be honest, if he's ends up being 15, 18% owned, come Sunday when we have our projections here, gonna have him around 10% or so or less.
Honestly, I I kind of think I get it. I get why. I really do. Like Daniel Jones has not been popular at all this season. Besides when he played Tampa Bay last week, I mean last year, and he went off at a huge game.
Mm-hmm.
I can see. I get why, and I understand it. It all lines up and it all makes sense. It's just who is he? Like, well, and it can work. He has Golden Tate back. He has Slayton, who I like as a young receiver. He
Mm-hmm.
has rushing upside because he can run the ball. Um, and and then he also has I mean, the running back situation is murky with Gallman and Freeman, but it doesn't seem like they want to give them the ball that much. As far as
Yep.
like 50, Freeman played 59% of the snaps, so he's playing more of the snaps, which I like, especially for a second week. So maybe he's picking up the playbook a little fast, um, picking up the playbook at a good pace. So
That's a
maybe
good
he
point.
might get yeah, so maybe he might get some more snaps, and then you can get to playing them more. I love the Giants this week. I can't believe I'm saying it. I like the
You
Giants.
just probably just came out with it. Like he was just warming up to saying it, and now he's just saying it. Like, you know what? I love you guys. I love you.
Yeah, it's like Leonardo DiCaprio and Wolf of Wall Street. I'm not
Oh
leaving.
boy.
we're not we're not gonna go there, but like I can see it. And then you got Evan Ingram too, who I've always liked as a tight end for the Giants since he first came onto the scene. Dallas just gives it up everywhere on the offensive end, and I mean on the defensive end, and I can't see that changing. And if to me, if the Giants can't pull it together and stop them, I mean, and put up a big game and have at least 24 points,
hmm
then then I'll never play them again. Like now that I'm thinking about it, I might switch to having Daniel Jones as like my favorite play on the slate, and
Damn.
I don't even know how I feel about it. Just saying
He's
that just sounds
declaring
weird.
it. You declaring the craziness. Now, you know what? It's definitely there. The narrative is there.
Both sides of the game are good.
No, yeah, it's like you have to. At the end of the day, you have to make some stacks. Maybe, and you know what? You have to account for at least for this game, similar to like what I was speaking to before, how I felt about like the Atlanta Carolina game. You're gonna have to make sure you have some 3-2s here. You know, like
Hmm.
the quarterback, wide receiver, or quarterback, running back, wide receiver, running it back with a running back and wide receiver, something like that nature. You're gonna have to do some 3-2s here just because you have to account for the narrative. But it's just funny because Dallas is at home, and that's one reason also why I like that. Like I felt like if the Giants were at home, I would probably have a little bit of a different viewpoint. But you know, being that I could tell that, and similar, you remember how I told you like how last week I liked Deshaun Watson, and then he became more and more popular as the week went on. I think that's going to
Yeah.
happen with Daniel Jones. I think that at that $5,400 price range, he's going to be even double what the projected ownership is there for him. So, not to say that he cannot get there, because at the end of the day, it's about being different amongst the rest of your lineup. Daniel Jones could definitely be within
I mean,
the tournament winning lineup because of his price, and he could score 30 to 35 fantasy points and have some touchdowns to Ingram and Slayton. And now it's just up to you to figure out how you were going to be different within the rest of your lineup. So that's definitely applicable. But what I am going to do for myself as his ownership grows, I'm going to try to just be a little bit more different in a sense of, because I just know how the Giants work. Like I
I
just know
understand
we
that.
just know how New York teams go when it comes. Unfortunately, we saw the Yankees go down today. At least they made it to the playoffs. But like we just constantly see the Giants and the Jets just struggle, and even in opportune times. So it's like when you expect something so much, and then it's just like we wake up the next day and it's just like,
You just let
we knew
down,
we
and
knew
you
we
just
knew
like,
they was just gonna let us down. Of course you would let us down. Of course you would struggle and score 7 points.
hmm
Like, and I stacked the hell out of this game and put so much into it. So yeah, I couldn't. I wasn't feeling that. So if Daniel Jones becomes basically the most popular quarterback on this slate, I will be falling back. And I'm monitoring that. So even like right now, like just to even give you like a realistic point of view from what like I've been building, like give me a second. I just want to see like, as soon as this pops up. Like I feel that for Daniel Jones, he's definitely within my top five as far as like most exposed. But I have a few other quarterbacks here that I have before him, and
Mhm.
I'm not. I know his own. As if his ownership really does grow, because right now I think I have him about like you said around 11, 12%. If that goes to 15, 18, I'm really not chasing after it to match it. I guess that's just the best way I could say it. So I won't be having as many stacks in that nature, but I will probably run some things back with Dak
Mhm.
Prescott.
Yeah, and I was about to say, Dak Prescott is, I think, going to be the highest owned quarterback on the slate, and I see why. It's the Giants. They're not overall a good defense. I mean, I would more so. I mean, I get the Dak Prescott play. I probably would, and it makes sense. It's
Hmm.
just he's 7,400. It's a little pricey. I would rather. I mean, what is Lamar Jackson? He's still more expensive. So I mean,
Yeah, he's
if you're
500
gonna
less
go
than
about this,
Lamar.
I personally, I rather play Deshaun Watson and take the chance of seeing how he is with his new coach.
I
Um,
agree.
because he,
Something's got to
it's
change over there offensively. I don't know if the offensive
yeah.
coordinator takes over or whomever. Have they announced that yet? Do you know anything about that? I haven't had a chance to
Mm,
look up anything on that yet.
no, I haven't. I have to look into that a little bit more. I just
Hmm.
I know Dak's gonna throw for over 300 yards, so the 300-yard bonus is gonna be there. Especially if it's a high scoring game like they predict. I don't know if it is gonna be though. Um, like it's a division, another divisional game too, and that changes everything because these divisional games get tricky to me. I always think divisional rival games tend to be less scoring because you know each other so much better, as I mentioned before earlier. These are
Hmm.
just things that I've always felt. Um, Sometimes it gets out of hand, but that's if you're a supreme team that can dominate. But both these teams are not really that well. Dallas is supposed to be better than what they are, and the Giants just suck. But they lost their best player too. So
And yeah, and with them, like you said, losing their best player and just playing just old suck. Like, who's to say that the Cowboys have a get right spot here and just kind of like win 30-10?
steamroll them.
Yeah.
I mean,
Like, who's to
that
say
could
that
happen.
they at home they just hold it down and they're like, oh, like yeah, we're back, and Skip Bayless is Monday morning he's bragging like for no fucking reason. Like, who's to say
I
that they don't win 30-10, and we were supposed to go elsewhere and we weren't even really supposed to be that heavy on the Giants side. So all I'm saying is that that possibility is very much there for what the talent and the personnel is on the Giants side. So I guess that's all I'm trying to mention. That and that's why I'm treading carefully here when it comes to the Giants' perspective. Even though Daniel Jones will be definitely that high owned and or possibly more high owned, it makes sense because he's going to have to throw. He's going to have to go and do the best he can, and the like you said, the Cowboys defense just gives it up. So it's going to be there. But if it's going to be the most popular thing, I'm definitely going to just have to find ways to get elsewhere, like you said, from a Deshaun Watson, from a perspective of that, or from even like a Matt Ryan, Teddy Bridgewater perspective.
Yeah, and I feel like this league like 10 games, so it's like the ownership's just still gonna be spread out. It's just more so having the right combination and having it concentrated all correctly. So
Hmm.
that's why I think that gets to another point where I think it's very important to build a tight knit player pool of players you like and make sure you set up the rules that is going to benefit you and tell a story in a way. Um, I think I was reading something on Roto-Grinders, which is what I use a lot, um, about that there's a lot of game sacks that are winning milli makers. So if you have the right game sack, you can definitely take one down. It's just more so finding when you're gonna get sneaky and different. And plays like playing like Deshaun Watson with the new coach that have the ownership of what's his name of Deshaun of oh goodness gracious Dak Prescott. Those
Hmm.
are places where you can get different and you can see that can help. it's not the end all be all because you're gonna need like other players at low percent ownership, but getting different like playing like a receiver and a tight end or receiver and running back combinations help you out a lot more too instead of the standard traditional double receiver with the quarterback so and running back with something else. So
Hmm.
I truly think that if it's happened before. It happened like say a couple weeks ago with the Seahawks being the most chalky stack and that having the most shocking game stack and winning someone in GPP because
Yep.
Russell Wilson just was on fire and so was Tyler Lockett.
And
It
that's
makes
that, and
sense.
that's like the difference there, right? Like, okay, Russell Wilson to Tyler Lockett or Metcalf was the
Hmm.
highest, the highest stack, right? Or the highest, Russell Wilson was the highest owned quarterback. But it's like, rightfully so. It's
Yeah,
like you look at Russell Wilson, like you're the highest owned quarterback because, you're facing off against whomever, like, who gives it up, like an Atlanta or whatever. Like, it's just like, okay, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, all right, I want to be different. No, I kind
yeah,
of want to be alike. But Daniel Jones with no Saquon and Slayton and Tate and Ingram, it's like, yeah, you definitely probably want to explore some differences there. It's not like the same situation. So, you know, but you're definitely right. At the end of the day, still, that's why we have to account for Daniel Jones in some
and
sense.
he's
Like I said, I might even match the field or just be a little bit under. But like I said, as it grows, I probably won't chase after it.
and he has also thrown at least 32 pass attempts in each of the games this year.
Hmm.
So that's enough. That's a positive.
He's,
It's
he's,
just
he's
and
definitely going to throw 30 plus attempts this week.
so maybe gonna have some rushing attempts too. So that'll be
Yeah.
good. Is there anything else that we missed on the slate that you want to talk about before we close up here?
Um, let me just let me just go to my lineups, like just from what I've been building lately, just to kind of see if I want to mention anything specific.
Okay.
I mean, I know we touched on a lot, obviously, but I think let me just say to kind of emphasize again, I'm just and I'm speaking from a contrarian, like just like low on perspective. Like I am gonna try to see if I can get some shares of well, I'm not gonna say try to see. I will have some shares of James Conner and Kenyon Drake. I just want to mention that because you know, and I could be 100% wrong, but I just like how they're lower owned and they're in good spots where it's just like you can't see something from a defensive end that should hinder them. It's not like the game
Hmm.
script works against them. So while everyone's chasing Hilaire, um, Edwards Hilaire, Zeke, and obviously Mike Davis, right? Like, yeah, I'm gonna have a lot of them, but I'm also gonna make sure I have a decent amount, a little bit overweight at the same time for like a Drake and a Connor, and also some David Johnson. I think David Johnson is a little bit mostly popular too, but I wanted to just emphasize that from a running back perspective because I like to try to also build some like cash game lineups where I have those three running backs, where I have that third running back in the flex. So I just wanted to mention those as options that I feel safe with having there.
Hmm.
If you wanted to speak from not only just a GPP perspective, but also a cash game perspective.
Okay. And I get that. I I I can't argue with those plays at all. Those are different plays, and that's what it's going to take for you to take down the GPP.
Hmm.
To get different, get weird. If you're on something, stick to it. If your research and your work supports it, just play it.
Yep.
What do you have to lose? Like that's all you can do is just play what's in your heart. But that's why we also call this the first instinct fantasy show because we just play what your first instinct is. If your guts tell you to do something, more likely you tend to be right. That's just my perspective. So,
Yeah.
but I think that we can. you can definitely take that in the tournament if you just listen to your instincts and trust what your process is. Always trust what your process. Don't ever switch up to try something new unless you want to experiment with something that's going to work out. But trust your process. Stay true to it. It takes time to break through. It's not easy. It's not a marathon. I mean, it's not a sprint. It's a marathon. And that's what we got to keep running all the time, and it's going to always continue and be the best and be the best at it.
Yeah,
Now,
I think that, like, even with just that first instinct, right? Like, so, like you said, just to mention this, how many times have you, and you could just think about it right now, and for those who are watching, how many times have you had a play, had a lineup, or had a thought, and then you overthought it a little bit, you kept thinking about it, and then you said, you know what? Oh, I think I like this better. I'm gonna change it to this. How many times does that work? When you went to actually make that change, how many times have you really just sat there and just said, like, wow, that was the best last minute, last second switch decision I ever made in my life? Or have you been like, I should have just left such and such? Like, to be
yep,
honest with you, it's funny the way it is, and I'm saying it in a weird way, but it's just like your brain is speaking to you, your heart is speaking to you. Like, when you're doing your research and you're doing your due diligence, like when you're doing all this research of all the statistics and all your analysis that you're doing, what comes up to you, it really is like what what you should be focusing on. Like, it's not coming up to you for no reason. So yes, will you have to make some alterations? I'm not saying you should never change anything. Obviously, we all make those. But at the same time, if you really feel really honed in on something, you definitely have to make sure you account for it. And if anything, just add more to other ideas. Don't take away.
hmm exactly. And know your limits, know your bankroll. Don't get over your head with it, and that's it. That's all I have to say when it comes to that. So unless you get ready, we're gonna get ready to get out of here. But before we go, let me I want to know what is your what player? I'm gonna do something different every week, but
Hmm.
right now, this week, what player is going to be in the Millie Maker winning lineup this come Sunday?
What player is going to be in the Millie Maker willing lineup?
Yeah,
Hmm.
and I
Can I have
and
35 seconds or so to think about that?
yeah, yeah, definitely.
And you're
I'll
gonna say
tell.
yours too, I assume. And you
Yeah,
know what?
I'm
Everybody else who's watching too, you know, despite just making comments and just asking questions, we want to think, if you can get this in before, obviously before lock, share with us who you feel is going to be that one person that's going to be that defining player that needs to be within that GPP lineup to take down a whole tournament. You share that with us as well. But let me just think for a second, because I have a few candidates, but let me just think. You want me to go first, right?
I'm looking myself, but I think I kind of have my play because I'm gonna go with what I think it is, and I think that it's going to be Lamar Jackson, in the Millie
Mm.
Maker winning lineup. I just like that. I just like the game that he's going to have from overall perspective. I know the most expensive quarterback on the slate,
Hey.
and it's like an obvious play, but I really like the Jackson. I mean the Lamar Jackson, Marquise Brown, and Mark Andrews combo, and I think that's going to be my personal first instinct stack that's going to take down a Millie Maker, and I'm going to have at least 10 stacks of those. Mix up a bunch
Hmm.
of different ways.
It's funny. I might even have some Lamar nakeds. But you know what? I think, huh, as and this player might not be, you know what? All right, I'll just go with it. So I'm gonna say James Conner is gonna be in the winning lineup.
Okay, that's bold.
Yep,
That's
I'm gonna
really
just say
bold.
it. I'm gonna just say it because I feel that and this is if the ownership stays where I feel it, where I'm seeing it as, right, at a single digit percentage. I'm just gonna go there and say that. My first instinct, though, I will say this initially, is gonna be David Johnson, but you know, he's at a great price. Everyone knows it. I think he's gonna be around like 15 to 20% owned. eventually when it's all
Mhm.
said and done, because we know about Jacksonville's defense not, being too good. And he's at a great price, right? He's $5,200 on DraftKings. So, it would be obvious for me to say David Johnson. So I want to say David Johnson, but I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna go out on a limb. I'm gonna make a bold prediction, something different. James Conner.
All right. And all right, so there you have it, folks. James Conner and the Lamar Jackson, Marquise Brown, Mark Andrews stacked by me. Um, Let me tell them where they can reach you at if they want to play you. Maybe offer invite you to some head to heads on FanDuel, DraftKings. Where they can find you at?
Oh, definitely. If y'all want to challenge me, oh yeah. So from a DraftKings and FanDuel perspective, I'm both Lemmie22, Lemmie 22.
All right, perfect. And mine's is Drizzy26. Anyone who wants that smoke can come get it. I'm open for head to heads whenever. Down to hopefully
Gonna
try to win some money, but we're also here to help out and have fun too at the same point in time. So, and if you have any questions, my Twitter is uh, bx boogie Dre on Twitter. If you need to get in contact, if you want to have any questions for me, or you can follow me on Instagram and DM me there at Drizzy26, which is also my FanDuel and my DraftKings. So, good night to you guys, and well, have a good day, I should say. If there's anything you need, just feel free to hit us up. Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.
Good luck, everybody.